Welcome to Simple Computer Upgrades on behalf of MakerFest 2020 hosted by the Pickering Public Library. My name is Mark. I am a worker in the technology space at the Pickering Public Library, and I will be your host and presenter for this program. And once again, this is going to be Simple Computer Upgrades. I will be your host. My name is Mark, and I'm a Client Experience Associate with the Pickering Public Library Technology Department. Let's get after it. Okay, so to begin, first we're going to take a look at our agenda. So we're going to start off by talking about reasons to upgrade your PC. From there, we're going to go in sections. The first section will be dedicated to upgrading your RAM. We're going to be looking at important preps before upgrading RAM, how to upgrade your laptop RAM, how to upgrade desktop RAM, and then in section 2, we'll be talking about how to upgrade your hard drive. Once again, we'll look at important preps before upgrading, how to upgrade a hard drive in a laptop, how to upgrade a hard drive in a desktop. We'll then do a quick summary, and I'll also provide some useful links at the end if you want to research further. So to begin, reasons to upgrade your PC. Doing simple upgrades to your PC can extend the life of your device. Rather than purchasing a brand new computer, doing simple upgrades can extend the life of the PC you currently own exponentially. Simple upgrades can improve the performance of your machine inexpensively. Going in this direction saves money. It's cheaper to upgrade than to buy new. When researched appropriately, upgrading your PC is far easier than you think. In this presentation, we will be covering the two simplest and most common upgrades to a personal computer, RAM and hard drives. Upgrading RAM improves the overall performance of your machine. Upgrading your hard drive will allow for more storage and the option to upgrade into an SSD drive. This presentation is a guide to show how simple these upgrades can be. Before attempting any upgrades to your PC, it is important to research your machine to know what upgrades can be made. This will involve being able to identify your motherboard and its limitations to know what upgrades you can make. The first thing that is a must before upgrading your machine is downloading the service manual for your PC. Your service manual will not only tell you the exact hardware that comes with your PC, it will also list procedures for how to safely replace parts according to the manufacturer's specifications. To give an example on how this looks, let's look up the machine I use to demonstrate our simple upgrades, the Dell Inspiron 5559. Finding a service manual for your PC on the internet is actually pretty easy. First, what you pretty much have to do is just open up a browser window, as I've done in front of us right here, and go to Google. Now, like I mentioned in the previous slide, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for the laptop that I'm going to be working on later in the video, which is the Dell Inspiron 5559 service manual. Just enter it into your Google search bar like that and press enter. Immediately, the first link that comes up is going to be a link directly to Dell's website involving the service manual. So let's just open up a new tab and take a look. Once the manual comes up, the cool thing about the service manual is it's a literal step-by-step guide to replacing any parts within the actual laptop that you could possibly imagine. So as you can see here, as soon as you get to the table of contents page, it starts off with before working inside your computer, safety instructions, recommended tools you might need to do replacement parts, and then at that point, step by step, it'll tack off each piece of hardware within the machine. So if we scroll down a little bit, we can see removing the memory modules, which is referring to the RAM. So if we skip to page 24 within this manual, as you can see, it's a manufacturer recommended procedure on how to actually remove memory from your computer. And this is actually perfect to have if you plan on replacing some RAM within your own machine. It's never a bad thing to have the manufacturer's recommendation on how you can get through this task. Now that we've downloaded our service manual for the laptop we're currently working on, the next step in the process is once again going to Google to figure out exactly how much RAM that specific laptop can take. The reason why this step is important is because realistically, there's no point in spending a whole bunch of money on RAM if the motherboard you're currently working with can't actually accommodate the amount of RAM you're purchasing. So this is a really important step. The second portion of this step is not only evaluating how much RAM we can put into this motherboard, but also figuring out what type of RAM, because there are different types, and before purchasing, this is really handy information to have. So let's jump over to Google and see exactly how this would go. Okay, and just like we did when we were looking up the service manual for the Dell Inspiron 5559, what we're going to do now is once again, we're going to use Google to actually look up the specs and how much RAM this machine can handle simply by using the Google search bar. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the search bar, type in Dell Inspiron 5559 maximum RAM, and let's see what Google tells us. Okay, So as we can see, the first link that comes up is from a site called memorystock.com, and it indicates to me that the Dell Inspiron 5559 can handle a maximum capacity of 16 gigs of memory. Sounds pretty good, but hang on a second, this is not necessarily the entire story. Scrolling down a little bit, I can see currently in the Dell community that there have been some questions in regard to RAM expandability. So let's click on this link and find out exactly what happened. As we can see here, first somebody's just asking how to upgrade their Dell Inspiron RAM. If you scroll down a little bit, as we can see here, a community manager on the site is answered, and then below, they give the supported memory configurations, which are really, really important. So, first, it tells you the maximum memory. Indeed, the first Google search result was correct. The max capacity RAM the Dell Inspiron 5559 can take is 16 gigabytes. But there's another important piece of information, and that's right here where it says memory type, and it tells us this laptop currently takes DDR3 RAM. Now, why is that important to you? What we want to keep in mind is that all machines are going to take perhaps different RAM depending on when they were manufactured. So in the event of laptops, the thing is that DDR RAM, which was purposely made smaller to fit inside of a laptop, goes anywhere from DDR2 to DDR5. The bottom line is when you're actually going to purchase this upgrade to install into your computer, you just want to make sure you actually get the correct RAM to install in, or it's not going to work with your motherboard. So, by doing a little simple research, we've saved ourselves a lot of time, because the bottom line is at this point, we know it takes a max memory of 16 gigs, and we now know exactly what type of RAM we need to purchase in order to actually install this into our machine. Now that we've downloaded the service manual, so we have the proper procedures, we've also consulted with Google and the Dell support community to know exactly A, how much RAM my laptop can handle, and B, what type of RAM I need to purchase. It's time to actually take a look exactly how you would take apart the computer and install the RAM in order to complete the upgrade. Okay, so at this point, we are literally ready to install some RAM, so here we go. First, pop the battery off of your laptop. Now for this particular laptop, there are two mounting screws, keeping a panel in place where the RAM is, so I'm just going to grab a screwdriver and unscrew those screws. Now that the screws have been removed, I'm going to grab a flathead, put it right underneath that gap, and slowly pry the back panel off in order to access the area where I can find my RAM. Now that the panel is off, I'm going to turn the laptop around, and I can see my RAM. First, I'm going to grab the two pins at the side to pop the existing RAM out of place, and you'll know it's good when it pops up like that. Now I'm going to grab my replacement RAM, line up the pins. Now, notice, you'll know it's good when it disappears, and you can just basically push it down, and the two side pins pop right back into place. And that's it. You've basically just replaced a piece of RAM, totally good to go. Now it's just a matter of putting the back panel back on and screwing it into place. There you go. Grab your screwdriver and make sure that that back panel's back on firmly. Pop the battery back in, and you're done. You have officially replaced a piece of RAM in your laptop. Now that we've gone through the process, step by step, on how to upgrade RAM in a laptop, now we're going to take a look at how you would do so with the desktop. For the most part, it's pretty easy. Now, the one thing to consider, most of the prep steps that we went through for a laptop, so looking up a service manual, using Google in order to look up the specifications on how much you can expand the RAM on the machine, works exactly the same for a desktop. The only difference is one's stationary and the other one's mobile, but the steps are exactly the same. So I'm not going to go through basically how to Google specs again, because realistically, a computer is a computer, regardless of whether it's a desktop or a laptop. Now, in terms of actually upgrading the RAM on a desktop, to be completely honest, you're actually going to find it a little bit easier. The beautiful thing about a desktop is they were made to be worked on. And as we're going to see in the next video, realistically speaking, it's easy as pie. So moving on to our desktop, just like we did with the laptop, we have a panel to remove, but this one's going to be a little bit easier. It's just basically removing 2 thumb screws in order for us to be able to remove a side panel. 1, and there's number 2. And as soon as you're done, just tilt it to its side. At this point, all you're going to do is lift the panel. And now, as you can see, we actually have access to the full motherboard. At this point, you're just going to take those 2 white tabs, pull them back, and the RAM pops right out, as you can see there. And here comes number 2. Nice and simple, just removed our RAM. Popping it in is nice and easy. Just make sure you align the pins in the appropriate position. And then secure using the 2 tabs at the side. Here comes number 2. As soon as you pop that in secured, all you have to do is put the panel back on and you're good. Okay, and that wraps up our first section, which is basically how to upgrade RAM in both a laptop and a desktop. And as you can see in the previous section, for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. It's nothing too difficult. It's realistically just knowing what equipment to pick up and following the directions. And again, if you're ever unsure as to the directions, always consult your service manual. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to section 2, how to upgrade the hard drive in both a laptop and a desktop. Just as was discussed at the very beginning of section 1, where we were discussing how to swap out RAM in either a laptop or a desktop, there are going to be a couple preps you need to make before swapping out a hard drive in either your desktop or your laptop. So first, exactly shown in section 1 of this tutorial, download a copy of your computer service manual. And I can't express the importance of this. Ultimately, it's never a bad idea to have the manufacturer's recommended procedure and how to swap out parts, and it's always a good thing to have. Next, you're going to have to make a decision on what is more important to you, speed or storage space, which is your HDD, standard spinning hard drive, versus an SSD, also known as a solid state drive. Now, unlike RAM, there is no limit to how much storage you can install onto your computer. However, if upgrading a laptop, you must consider how to back up your previous information and how you will reinstall the OS after upgrading. One of the handy things about a laptop is you can pick it up and take it anywhere with you. However, one of the major drawbacks of a laptop is, due to the fact that they've had to condense its size to make it portable, you can't really install a second hard drive into it as you would a desktop. Because of this fact, if you made the decision to upgrade to a solid state drive as opposed to your regular standard spinning hard drive, you can totally do that. The only thing you would have to consider before actually swapping the 2 drives out was you would actually have to back up your data and figure out how to reinstall the OS. Just as a side note, reinstalling the OS onto the machine after you've completed upgrades is not something that will be covered within the span of this workshop. So with that said, you basically have a decision on the 2 different drives that you can purchase. You can either get a standard spinning hard drive, which is also known as an HDD, or an SSD, solid state drive, which looks like this. Now visually, there's one major difference between the 2, and it's this section right here where you see the circle where there's currently a magnet. A standard hard drive, or a spinning hard drive, basically has mechanical moving parts on the inside that spin in order to process information. After long periods of time, these drives do start to break down, and it is possible to have a hard drive failure. Solid state drives are really solid because they use flash memory. And remember, flash memory, if you're not sure what it is, basically think about the memory you would insert into, say, your camera or maybe your phone for expanded memory. That's the exact type of memory that goes on the inside of a solid state drive. What makes this basically more stable is, because there's no moving parts and it's just basically moving towards that flash memory, the fact of the matter is it is a more stable drive. Now, a regular HDD or spinning hard drive is cheaper and provides more storage. SSD or solid state drive is faster and provides better performance because it utilizes flash memory rather than spinning disks and moving parts to process information. Though an SSD is more reliable, it is also more expensive than standard HDDs. The decision to upgrade to SSD for better performance or an HDD with the largest storage size is entirely a personal decision. Note: desktops often allow for the installation of more than one hard drive, so you could have both an SSD for applications and an HDD as a slave drive for storage, and this would work. That is one of the flexibilities about doing this upgrade with the desktop. Sometimes you don't actually need to remove your previous hard drive. You can actually just install a second one. That, however, is realistically going to depend on your specific desktop computer. Okay, so now that we've kind of got an idea of the preps that need to go into this, the next thing we're going to take a look at is exactly how you would swap out a hard drive from a laptop. Okay, so just as we saw with the RAM video, first you're going to start off basically by removing the battery and taking off the back panel by removing a couple of screws in order to access the hard drive. And just like you did before, grab your flathead and pop off that panel. And next, there are four screws basically holding the laptop hard drive into place. So basically, you're just going to grab a screwdriver and you're basically going to unscrew those four screws in order to remove the drive. Once the screws are removed, what you're going to do is you're going to grab that tab piece of plastic in order to lift the drive, and then basically all you have to do is disconnect the ribbon at the very back of it to completely remove the drive, like so. The next thing you need to do is you need to basically get the hard drive off of the mount, and it's basically two screws on each side, so basically grab your screwdriver again, unscrew, and basically just get it off the mount so you can put in your brand new drive. In this case, it'll be an SSD. Once now that we have our SSD drive inside the mount, basically all you're going to do is now you're going to put the four screws back in order to hold it firmly in place onto the mount. Nice and simple. Then at this point, what you're going to do is you're basically going to put the ribbon mount back in at the very back in order to connect it to the motherboard. Screw in your four mounting screws in order to put it back into place. And to be completely honest, that's literally it. The only thing you really have to do from this point going forward is once those screws are into place and everything's appropriately connected, all you basically have to do is put the back panel, screw the back panel back on, pop your battery in, and that's it. For the most part, it's a really simple upgrade. And there you have it, 8 screws, and it's done. And just like the previous lesson that dealt with RAM, we're now going to move on to the final section of this lesson, which is going to be how to replace a hard drive inside of a desktop. And just like we saw in section 1, realistically, replacing a hard drive in a desktop is a little bit easier than a laptop because, again, you do have a little bit more space to work with, which does make it simpler. So let's jump into the video and take a look and see how it's done. So first things first, just like we saw in the RAM video, we're going to start by removing our thumb screws in order to get the side panel off to access the main motherboard and basically the blood and guts of the computer. And just like we did before, turn to its side and pull the panel off. Once there, basically, you can see your hard drive based on the connectors that are currently connected to it. It's 2 screws, so all you're going to do is grab your screwdriver, unscrew those 2 screws from the mount. Once those 2 screws are unscrewed, the next thing you're going to do is also disconnect the 2 cables which are connected to the hard drive and the motherboard, just to be able to pull the hard drive out cleanly. Like so. And like so. And your drive is out. Once you get it on a table, the next thing you're going to have to do is you're basically, just like you did with the laptop hard drive, you're just going to have to basically unscrew 4 screws to get the drive off the mount. Nice and easy. And now you're ready to put your new drive in. So, very similar to the laptop, all you got to do at this point is basically put the mounting screws back in to make sure that the drive is secure to the mount. Now we're ready to install it back into the computer. So you're going to slide it in and line up the screw holes and basically screw the hard drive back in. Yep, there's cable number 1. And once you do this, basically at this point, all it's a matter of doing is putting the side panel back on. And with the end of that last video, that actually brings us to the end of our presentation. So basically at the end of this, you should have some awareness now at this point on basically how to replace both RAM and hard drives in both a laptop and a desktop. To summarize, in short, these computer upgrades are pretty easy as long as you do the right preps. Consult your manufacturer using Google to get a copy of your service manual. Make sure you research motherboard limitations and requirements to get the right parts. And finally, don't be afraid. This is fun and rewarding work. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I'm also going to include some useful links. Long story short, quite a bit of the research I did came back to a specific site called howtogeek.com. They give some excellent, fantastic articles in regards to specifically how to upgrade RAM and how to upgrade your hard drive for both laptops and desktops. If you want to basically check that out for further research, I've provided the links right here, so you can actually basically go take a look for yourself. And if you have any further questions regarding this presentation, you can email me at merrickkoshman@picnet.org. With that being said, this brings this presentation to a close, and I hope you guys all have a fantastic day, and thank you for listening.